everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Round Table. I'm your host, Josh Turner, also known as Wolf. And you can call Paranormal Round Table PRT. That's what a lot of people call it. And we call our listeners the paratroopers. They call themselves that. And I don't argue with them. My name is Josh Turner. Like I said, my email address is joshturner@prtpodcast.com. joshturner@prtpodcast.com. You send me your stories. Or you can send me a friend request on Facebook, and I'm also on Instagram at JoshTurner940. That's JoshTurner940 on Instagram, and so you can send me a friend request on Facebook, and we can become friends. But make sure that you let me know through Messenger, through a message that you are a fan of the show, a listener. Otherwise, I probably won't approve it. In fact, I know I won't. So just go ahead and do that. If we're not friends in real life, then that's how you become a friend of mine on Facebook. And you'll be on my friends list unless something happens, something crazy. So it's up to you. So we have a guest that's going to come on tonight, but before we get started with that, I want to let you know about our Paranormal Roundtable group on Facebook. We have Paranormal Encounters on Facebook, which is Tony's group. Paranormal Lounge, which is Nellie's group, and then I am an admin in many other groups, Dogman, Werewolf Discussion, Wolf Turner, I think it's Wolf Turner at PRT fan page. I'm not 100% sure. I think that's what it is. I didn't make that, but it is a fan page, and it's a group. And then we have Paranormal Trucker Podcast, which is another group, and Ryan Tremblay's A Whisper to a Scream. And then D.A. Roberts' group, North American Dogman Project, and I have Quad Coalition of Sciences with Nick Valente. And so I'm in all these groups. Check them out. And so anyways, now here's the thing. If you're listening to me on podcast, on a podcast platform, and you're not checking us out on YouTube, you're missing out, because on YouTube, Tuesdays, we do a live stream every Tuesday. Okay. And it goes 2 to 3 hours every Tuesday, and you're missing a bunch of content. We have a guest on just about every week, a different guest, and we talk about all kinds of different topics: Dogman, Bigfoot, ghosts, alien abduction, flying saucers, whatever. And like I said, and there's a live chat that goes with it. And if you miss it and you can't catch the live chat, well, then go back in the archives on YouTube. We have 70 of them, or 71 now, I don't know, live streams on there. And there's a lot of content. I mean, a lot. And we have hundreds of these podcast episodes that are on there too. Two different things, a Friday show and then a Tuesday show. That being said, I also want to bring up that there is a conference that we're putting on August 12th and 13th. The 13th is the main conference. The 12th is for the VIPs. If you haven't gotten your tickets, go to Eventbrite. And go to first annual, it's Paranormal Roundtable Presents first annual Dogman Cryptid Conference. Okay? It's being hosted by myself and Ken Gerhard. It's a PRT sponsored event, and so there's going to be many, many speakers. I think there's like 14 different people that are going to speak. I'm over here getting a nod from Anthony, yeah. Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhard, Josh Nanocchio from What Lurks Beneath, Tony Merkel from The Confessionals, Steve Stockton, Nick Redfern, David Weatherly, Barton Nunley, Nick Valente. I mean, there's a bunch of people. It's too many to even sit here and list all. Vault, Kenny Irish, Elijah Henderson. It's going to be a big event. Bettina Moss. So if anybody is interested in purchasing tickets, go to Eventbrite and get your tickets. And I'm hoping that the person that I'm about to be speaking with will show up at the conference too. I'm hoping that happens. And so now I'm going to introduce this person. His name is Tex, and he has a show called Tex's Front Porch. And that is TEX''S, not Texas in the state, but like is in Texas, is in his front porch. So I want to say hi, Tex.
How y'all doing?
Pretty good, Tex. How are you doing? That's one of our fans.
Man, that's awesome. You already got one listening. I love it.
So anyway, weird, creepy sounding fans aside. So what are we talking about tonight, Tex? Now you were on the we talked. I was on your show on Tex's back porch or front porch. And we did a couple hour show and we talked about all kinds of stuff. We went in all kinds of different directions. And so we said, hey, you know what? I want you to come on and I wanted to record with you because you have had a Dogman encounter and you have a lot of information. Now I met you, for those who did not catch the show that I did with you. Let me get you up to speed. I met Tex and Jason, his co-host, at the Mineola Bigfoot Conference. It's the Southeast Bigfoot Roadshow, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And so Tex was there, and it was a good time. It was April 30th, I believe, this year. And so now you're on our show. So Tex, tell us what it's all about. You want to tell us about your show and tell us what happened to you?
Yeah, sure. The show the show kind of fell into my started by accident. I was co-hosting another show and creative differences, that type of thing. And you don't really have the freedom to do what you want to do if it's not your thing. You know how it goes. And so I said, there's things I want to talk about. There's things I want to do. So I just, I started doing my own thing. Well, then I went to the Jefferson conference and I ran into Jason and we just hit it off, man. I don't know what it was. It's sex appeal or, something. But we really hit it off and became friends. And a little while, I had him on my show. And the guy's don't tell him I said this. He's so intelligent. He can talk about anything and talk and talk and talk. But after I had him on the show, we kept in touch and we got to where we talked almost daily. And I went ahead and popped the question and asked him if he wanted to become a co-host and part of the team. And he jumped head first into it. And we've put together, I think, a stellar team. I mean, we went from one show a week. And I met Jason 3 years ago. We started doing one show a week, and then we're up to 5 shows a week now. And plus we do field research and everything. So we've got, the flagship show, they call it. It's Texas Front Porch. And that's on Mondays at 6:30 p.m. Central. And then we've got Tuesdays are pretty much our day off. And then Wednesdays, we've got Jason McLean Questions Everything on at 9 Central. And then Thursdays, we have Bigfoot Michigan Rob. We have brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. And Rob is from Michigan. He is one of the few people that I know that has actually not only saw Bigfoot, but it vocalized at him. And he witnessed all this. And his counter is pretty crazy too. But we do that show at noon on Thursdays. And then Thursday nights, we have Jason does his gig and it's serial papers, and he gets into all kinds of crazy stuff. And then Friday, we have the newest member of our team, Jessica Jones. Gorgeous, talented, personable. I mean, just checks all the boxes. And she's an accomplished remote viewer that has done work with the government, and she's a Bigfoot researcher. And it's just, we got together and we started talking, and we were kind of thinking about going down the true crime thing because I'm kind of into the true crime and serial killer thing. And then we came up with this idea about remote viewing alleged paranormal and cryptid attacks on people. And that's where we went with it. Nobody's doing that. And she's remote viewed a lot of stuff. The Dutla Pass incident, the Port Lock incident in Alaska, the LBL attack, massacre, the Lockett Ranch attack. The list goes on, and she's not even slowing down, man. She's right into that. But the thing about it, doing this stuff is it takes a mental and emotional toll on her if she does something that's dark, so we have to kind of give her a break and, do some lighter stuff. And, we can't do brutal attacks every week, but, yeah, that's where we're at now. We actually spoke at our first conference, the Alabama Bigfoot Conference, a few weeks ago, and that went really well. We all got to meet face to face for the first time. That was awesome, and met some great people, a lot of listeners, a lot of fans, and it's very humbling, And you get in contact with these people, and they tell you their stories and then their encounters, and it's the two driving forces behind our channel, really, when you get down to it, is we're there to give people a platform. If they've had these encounters and they traumatized them, you can't really go to anybody to talk about these things. Now, we don't consider ourselves self-therapists or anything like that. We'll give you an ear to bend, and sometimes that's all you need, because it breaks my heart when people have these encounters and then they'll never go camping again, they'll never go hunting again, they'll never go out in the woods again, whatever. And it shouldn't be like that. People shouldn't be scared to go out there. And we try to help people deal with that, where they can get back to doing what they love to do. And the other thing is we're trying to bridge a gap between the cryptid community seems to be divided between the flesh and blood community or the gorilla camp and the woo camp. And we're trying to bridge that gap and get people on both sides to start talking and having actual discussions and not just, getting mad at each other. If we can get people to be open-minded enough to sit down and have an actual conversation, we can learn from each other. Because right now we're kind of stuck in a rut in both camps, but nobody wants to admit it because there's a lot more going on out there. Any researcher, I think, that's been doing stuff out there, researching these cryptids, has run into stuff or had something happen to them that they can't explain, that they can't write off as a cryptid. There's other stuff going on out there. You and I both know that. We both had experiences, so.
Well, one of the things I was going to say, and I can interject, okay, so you just talked about a lot of things. I think that the cryptid community and the paranormal, it's all divided into like different camps, but then there's like splintered factions in those camps.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, even in let's just start with the woo. Like if you take what's called the woo, there are people, the Bigfoot, that say that it's flesh and blood, and then so they're just strict apers, and then there's those that are, no, these are hominins and hominids. There's two, and then there are two different things that say, no, they look more like people that are throwback Neanderthal-like people, and there's people that said, no, these are literally apes that are an undiscovered species. And then there's some that say, the possibility is there that they're both, and then they want to say, well, they come from inner dimensions. They come from inner Earth. And there's people like I had to referee an argument the other day that got kind of carried away between two of my fans that were kind of going back and forth on the thread we had on a messenger group, whatever. And they were arguing, and one said, how are they coming out of a different dimension if they're coming from our dimension within the Earth? And then that started a whole big thing, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to exit this because this is getting out of hand. And so they kept trying to get me to be like, well, what do you think? What are you coming back to me like I'm an expert on this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not, I believe that they could be two different things going on at the same time. I don't see why that's such a big deal, but apparently some people it is a big deal. And then the Dogman thing. Oh boy! One of my colleagues, Ken, Gerhard, he touched off a firestorm on Facebook one day when he said in a group that we're in that Dogman is not a cryptid. Now there is a particular researcher that everybody calls the Dogman Whisperer. I didn't coin that term; other people started calling him that, and me and him have had a very public feud. We don't really get along, and I just. he has made a lot of enemies with people, but he's a researcher. He doesn't have a podcast. He doesn't have any kind of, and he's always claiming he has all this evidence. So he immediately started attacking Ken, and I wasn't even there. I was not in that group. I was actually not in that group, but it got Scorpion, one of my friends, involved, and then my wife involved, and a couple of our listeners jumped in because my wife got involved, and then Ryan Tremblay, a friend of ours, he got involved, and then there's this big thing. Just it all blew up from this, from Ken making that statement, and this other guy, this researcher, says, "Well, you've been researching for 30 years, 20 years, whatever he claimed it was, and he goes, and you haven't found anything, and blah, blah, blah." And then somebody said, "Well, you haven't either. You just claim you have," and blah, blah, blah. And then it just went from there. So there's this whole division, like with the flesh and blood. Okay. Like, and it's really weird. Like if you take Ken, for example, he believes that Bigfoot is an ape. He's an aper. He believes it's like an ape. That's undiscovered. Now that is really truly cryptozoology. Lauren Coleman would say that's cryptozoology right there. Okay. So if you take what he believes about Dogman, I mean, he believes that it is a supernatural entity because he doesn't believe that there is any precedent for it. And I'm kind of in the same camp. I do believe that there are two different types of Bigfoot going on. I think that there's something going on, two different types of things, and maybe three, maybe four. And then the Dogman thing, people are always trying to pin me down. I tell them, I don't know. I mean, I think that these things are flesh and blood, but they're not. And it's so hard to describe how I actually believe. It's like a metaphysical thing that can turn itself physical but not be, if that makes any sense. Take like aliens coming through the wall, for example, and then rematerializing as solid. Yeah. And so then there is there are these splintered factions within factions. And I've seen smaller factions just implode and everybody goes their own way because nobody can agree on the time of day. And that is very admirable of you guys to try to, like, as you say, bridge the gap. But I mean, I came into this field thinking that I was going to work with everybody and be friends with everybody, and I was going to be the guy that was going to get along with everybody. And no, that does not happen in this field, and it doesn't happen in the ghost community. I'm in like 50 different ghost groups, and they fight like everybody. Somebody says the other day, they're like, "Oh, the cryptid community just fights more than any other." I was like, "No. Have you seen the ghost community? Have you seen the UFO community?" I mean, the fights are like, you could make reality TV out of this. It's crazy. I mean, So, I mean, the paranormal is just it's very divisive. because there are all these mysteries and nobody really knows. And that's why we're here. We wouldn't be doing this, me and you, if we had all the answers already. You would always be, "Oh, okay." You can just point and say, "Yeah, that's the way it is. We've got the science. Here's the book, and it's done." Nobody's going to be making shows about it because there it is. That's the answer. But there are all these shows on TV. There are all these shows on YouTube and all these different platforms. And it's just because people, there's no answers. And the books, people write books because it's an interesting, fascinating subject. But yeah, people cannot agree on the time of day, and it just goes down the rabbit hole to the point where, there are people who don't speak to each other in this community. And I know that after the show, I'm not going to get into what was said, but between me, you, and Jason, I was like, "Look, I'm going to lay it out there. This person doesn't like this person. This person doesn't work with this person." And you have to kind of get to know who's nemesis, and everybody's got one. Everybody, even the most peaceful people, you'd be like, "Oh, that person, they don't fight with anybody. They get along with everybody." Yeah, right. But they're going to tell you, "Hey, there's this person and there's that person." Everybody's got somebody, man. I'm telling you. I mean, and some people have a couple, 3 people, and they're just like, "You know what? Forget that person. I ain't working with that guy or that girl. That I won't work with them." And people will make outlandish claims, and other people will refute it, and then it'll just go on and on and on. But from what I gathered from you and Jason, is that you guys, now what you said about Jason, somebody who can talk about anything, you were absolutely right about it. He is so smart, that guy. And not to take away from you or me or anything like that, but he's very intelligent. And when I was talking to him at the Southeast Bigfoot Roadshow, me and him hit it off, and we started talking, and we were talking Bible theology. We were talking about the Anunnaki. We were talking about Bigfoot, Dogman. It just went on. I mean, we could have sat there all night. And when we talked the other night on your show, I know we could have just kept going on and on and on.
Oh, yeah, we could have went all night.
Yeah, and so here we are now talking with you, and so I'm going to ask you the first question. Just let me just ask, what is your thought? Let's just start with Bigfoot. I mean, what do you think Bigfoot is?
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me touch on a few things that you mentioned to it.
Okay.
First off, you said people come to you, and try to pin you down on stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, I'm an expert. One thing people need to realize, there are no experts.
Yeah, exactly.
And as far as the paranormal thing going on, you're right. There's multiple stuff happening out there. And that kind of leads into what you just asked me. Bigfoot. Being out in the field. Now, I've had the only encounters that I feel comfortable saying that they were truly flesh and blood. There was 3 of them. And it was my first sighting, my first daylight sighting, my second daylight sighting, and one nighttime sighting. And my first sighting was, pretty benign, actually. It was, I'd just gotten out of my truck, pulled into the research area, first time ever being there. The other guy was getting the stuff ready out in the truck. I'm kind of getting the lay of the land because I don't want to get lost because I've never been here before. And I'm looking around, and we're parked on the side of a thin tree line and next to a hayfield. I'm looking through this tree line, and on the other side of this tree line is a wheat field. And the wheat's about 4 feet tall at this point. So, and the research area was down in the floodplain right off the Red River. A little place I'm sure a lot of people have heard about, and it's called Brown Springs, Oklahoma. And so I'm just standing outside my truck. I'm kind of looking around, and I'm looking through this tree line. I'm looking over in the field, wheat field, and this critter pops up out of the wheat field, looks around, and just takes off running towards the bottoms. Now, I saw him from about the waist up, and the wheat's about 4 feet high. So that puts him at about 8 feet, at least. I saw him from the waist up till he hit the fire break that was mowed around the wheat field, and I saw him head to toe, and for a couple of steps, and he went into the trees. And my exact words were, "I'll be damned, there goes the one right there." So, the guy I was with, he's like, "You're kidding me," blah, blah, blah. So I said, "No, man." So we went down to the bottoms, and we're walking down through the bottoms, and we're hearing something up on the ridge to our left, kind of pacing us. And then every so often we'll hear a single wood knock. And then we'll walk another 100 yards or so, and we'll hear another wood knock. And that went on and on and on. What we theorize is what was going on was there was possibly a pod or a family group, however you want to look at it, in front of us, and he was kind of ushering them, so we wouldn't walk up on them. So it made sense to us, but the thing about it is, this is all speculation. But as far as I think they are physical creatures, but I think there's something else out there that is presenting itself as Bigfoot. I don't know why. I don't know what its end game is, but I think that's what's going on. Just from my experiences out in the field and everything like that. So that's my view on Bigfoot. My second sighting was, we were scoping out a campsite. It was me, Jason, and Bob Van Buren, our executive producer. And I've got the binoculars out, and I'm looking in the trees. And I see this, the white, gray, fuzzy, calico-looking cat. I see I basically see that color configuration, and it's kind of fuzzy, hugging a tree about 40 yards in. And I'm like, what in the world? And I'm looking at this, and I said, y'all got to see this. And I'm trying to pass by them, and I learned a hard lesson. I always put your binoculars on a tripod. So I'm trying to pass these binoculars back and forth between these two guys. And say, okay, you see this tree here? Look just right to that tree, blah, blah, blah. By the time I got the binoculars back, it was gone. So we went in and we looked at around the tree that this thing was standing at. Now, around the tree were bare spots in the forest floor, and a trail that led off to the left. Like this thing it was an outpost or an observation post that this evidently these things are using to watch that campsite. Because if you follow the footsteps, these bare spots were about the size of big feet, and they're purposely going over dead branches laying on the ground. And at a later date, we got 3 trackers that we get out in the field with us, 3 expert trackers, and I showed that to them, and they agreed with me. So that kind of validated that theory. And then my third encounter that I think was a physical one was we were in camp one night. We were getting a lot of activity, and we saw something run out of the trees, run right beside my pickup, and then back into the trees. So we went over there and we was looking in the tree line. It was dark, and we saw what we thought was about a halfway broken off tree, about 6-7 feet high, and then it walked off. So, and then we found a twig about 6 inches long, just right behind my pickup where we first saw him, that was broken like 4 spots. It was a green twig. It was like he was sitting there playing with it, because it wasn't there before. We were all over this place, and we were constantly looking for stuff because we've had them come up close to camp before. So those are the 3 encounters that I've had that I can say comfortably that they are physical creatures. But I've had a lot more experiences out there that I can't say that were, physical. The dark shape in the woods with the glowing red eyes about 8 feet tall, So I don't know what to think. I just know there's a lot of stuff going on that we can't explain.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that when you mentioned Brown Springs, that is a hotbed for paranormal activity in itself.
Yeah, it is. It is. That place rarely disappoints when you get out there. Because I was, for years, up until last year, I was going out there and doing my research mainly by myself. I go out there and spend, night out there and everything by myself, go to the cemetery. And I've got audio that I've got growls. I'm getting my gear out of the truck at the bottom of the cemetery one night, and I'm not thinking nothing, and I'll take off, walk up the trail, and go up, look around a little bit, come back down. Well, after I played it back, for about the first 3 to 5 minutes of me getting ready, you can hear growls on the recording that I never heard. And then I think it's like 12 minutes in, I'm walking up the trail and you hear a female voice go, "Come on," right in my mic, So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on up there.
So you think that particular spot is haunted, and that's why there's this Bigfoot activity, or do you think they're drawn to it?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I wish I could say. I wish I could say I did. I wish I could say I knew that the Bigfoot were either drawn to the paranormal entities or vice versa. But they seem to go hand in hand. I just can't figure out why. And you get a lot of people with a lot of conjecture, and a lot of theories, but that's all they are, We looked into the past of this place. There's supposed to be a huge entity that's reported to be, 12 feet or taller, and it's an old ancient entity that protects or oversees the cemetery area, because from what we found out, it started out as an Indian burial mound, and It's got a real dark past. That whole place down there's got just a bloody past. There was the mafia dumping ground for a while, and we shot a documentary down there. 2 weeks after we shot the documentary, there's a body found. Right down from where we were camping. We've been walking out in the woods, and this is out in the middle of nowhere. Find clothes, female's clothes, neatly folded up in the middle of the woods. And I'm shorts, shoes, sunglasses, shirt, the whole 9 yards. Socks. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? One of the creepiest things that ever happened to me. I went down there. I was by myself. And went down to one of the campsites I used. And I get out and I'm walking around and I saw this suitcase, and it was tossed over the brush, and there was a bunch of papers and pictures and everything laying out, and it seemed to belong to a teenage boy. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And then I started smelling something dead. And I'm like, oh no, I don't like where this is headed. But I had to find out, so kind of tracked the smell down. Well, fortunately, somebody had brought their dog down there and shot it. But I was just, and down there you have to be ready to walk up on a dead body at any point. I mean, you really do, with its past it's ongoing now. I mean, still bodies found down there. So,
that's crazy. And I guess here's the question. Like, I mean, if you've seen Bigfoot, you said you've had 3 encounters? Right. And so...
Well, 3 sightings.
3 sightings, yeah.
Three sightings that I would consider physical.
Physical, yeah. And so, okay, well, I guess that the other question, would that be, do you believe that they're physical? Or do you, like you said, you think that like those that you saw those are 100%, you think? Or what do you think?
I think so. Jason would disagree with me. He's one of his favorite sayings is, I'm 30 seconds away every day from just saying it's all paranormal, throwing my hands up, walking away. And I get that, I really do. But the things that I've seen, and it's not just Bigfoot. I've seen Dogman, up close and personal. So, I think there are physical entities out there, but I think there's other entities out there also. And I think they're, like I said earlier, I think they're presenting themselves as Bigfoot just so they can, people out there looking for Bigfoot, they really want to communicate with them. Maybe these things are presenting themselves so they can get their foot in the door with these people, because Paranormal 101, spirits are going to lie to you, trick you, whatever they can, because you kind of have to invite something in if it's going to follow you around. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And what really, really concerns me is, and I've got a lot of friends that, claim to mind speak with these creatures.
Yeah.
And my question is, how do you know it's Bigfoot? 9 times out of 10, I get the same answer. Well, they told me it. Well, I go right back to Paranormal 101. How can you trust any? I don't know how anybody can trust anything that's speaking to you in your mind and telling you what to do in the first place. That's just. But it has become a legitimate concern for me for the safety and well-being of these people. Because what if it's not Bigfoot? You have to consider that.
Well, I mean, that is, I had taken issue with a person who was on a very popular show on TV. He had told one of my witnesses that came on my show, actually, and Bigfoot's not going to hurt you. Your grandkid can play down by the creek with Bigfoot. Bigfoot won't hurt you. Give it apples. They like donuts. And I was aggravated. I told her that is absolutely not true.
That's the worst advice you can give anybody.
Yeah, and he did that, and I was just like, and everybody probably knows this guy. I'm not gonna say his name because it would touch off a bunch of. But I was like, dude. I mean, That is not true. I mean, I'll put it this way. It may be true for that one particular creature, but to err on the side of caution, if you had just a pit bull, okay, let's just take any dog, large breed of dog. I'm not picking on pit bulls, but let's just say an aggressive Rottweiler pit bull that is just running around loose, and it hasn't really come up to you, but it's kind of there looking at you every now and then. My advice would not be to go out there and lay some chicken out there for it, to some dead, raw, whatever chicken meat, to, here you go. Let's see if this dog will come up and let's see if it'll take the chicken. And, it's like, dude, if it is a flesh and blood creature, whether it's a spiritual entity or it's a flesh and blood creature, at that point becomes irrelevant. Either way, it is not something you should be messing with. You can look at it, 8 foot, 9 foot tall, this creature, and you're not going to want your child around it because this thing could snatch it up. It could take off with it, with the food or the child, and it may be like, oh, well, you know what? I want more. And it could come back. And, somebody could get hurt, whether it's the kid or the adult or whoever. And so I just told her, I was like, that's very, very bad advice from him and very irresponsible of him. I was like, and you can tell him I said that. And I mean, I just thought it was ridiculous. And it's just something you shouldn't do. And I have heard so many stories. And then there are people in the Dogman community. Now, and I'm telling you this, some of these so-called researchers and people who've had experiences and stuff, and I've talked to them, and they'll be like, well, Dogman is evil and bad, and it will hurt you, but Bigfoot's not. They're like, Bigfoot is like this kumbaya, we're all going to hold hands, and we can get along, and it's a really good thing. And I'm like, dude, and this one lady was just real adamant. She was like, Dogman is completely evil. She believed they were all flesh and blood, but she thought that Dogman was bad and Bigfoot was good. And then I've heard people, this is other guy, who told me that Dogman, I'm not even going to try, I can't even say without laughing. He said, Dogman were created by the Anunnaki. This is what he told me, literally. He believes this. I mean, he was like, they were created by the Anunnaki to protect humans from Bigfoot. And I was like,
yeah, I've heard.
Yeah. And he had, when he said that, and I said something, so he had one of his friends come on and start proselytizing to me, trying to get me to believe. And I'm just like, I said, look, man, you can believe what you want. You can believe that they're made of, chocolate pudding and, I don't care what you believe. You know what I mean? Like you can just, I don't care what you think they are. It's just, the bottom line is you're never going to convince me that they're safe. You're never going to convince me to get in the water with sharks, crocodiles. I'm not going to do it in a cage or out of a cage. I don't care. You're not going to convince me to go and leave, food out for a dog that could be potentially dangerous or harmful, because I don't want that large, aggressive breed around me, because I don't know that dog. I don't know its temperament. I don't know anything about it. So why would I go out there and take chances with Dogman or Bigfoot, which may or may not be supernatural? And the other thing, Tex, like, think about this. There are so many different things that could be going on. Okay. And I wanted to get your opinion about one particular case, but I want to throw something at you about let's just start with Bigfoot. Okay. Let's say that Bigfoot is, for, like you said, there's more than one thing going on. What if we are dealing with time slips and we are seeing these prehistoric creatures? This is just one train of thought. And that's what we're seeing as these physical Bigfoot. We think that they're physical Bigfoot, but we're just seeing time through time slips. We're catching glimpses of these ancient hominins, two different things. What if that's one thing? And somebody threw out, well, what if it's actually, and somebody from my own team, and we started talking one day, and we just sitting there debating back and forth and coming, kind of just throwing ideas out there. And he was like, what if, Bigfoot is actually, they're the ones that disappear and reappear, what if they're the spirits of a deceased population, That's another thing. I mean, the late Scott Martis is a good friend of mine, and he was the researcher of Lake Champlain monster. And he, toward the end of his life, we were gearing up to do a show before he passed. And we were talking about doing a show about plesiosaur sightings and these mosasaur sightings, and how some of them people were reporting that they would disappear. And so me and Ryan Tremblay were going to do a show with them, and so we ended up, me and Ryan kind of shelved it, and it's been a while now, and we're talking about, hey, maybe we should open it up and go ahead and just do what we were going to do and do the water cryptids. But some of these cases were so weird, like people seeing like a mosasaur disappear. And, I don't know. I just, he started, Scott was very much flesh and blood. It's a relic population, whatever. But then he was like, I don't know anymore because I'm starting to get all these weird reports. And then he started reading more about the Bigfoot and stuff, disappearing, reappearing, Dogman, same thing. Because me and him would talk, and I miss Scott. He was a good guy. He was a good friend of mine. But it was so weird, how me and him met in like early 2019, I think it was. Or no, it was either 2018 or 2019. And we kind of met by accident. I joined his group. And when I tried to post like an episode of, I think it was either DER or my show, whatever, that I was on, and he was like, "What is that?" And then I told him, and and he didn't. He was like, "This is a zombie plesiosaur society." I thought it was like some sort of paranormal group about ancient cryptids or whatever. Yeah, like I thought it was about water cryptids or whatever. And he was like, "No, man, this isn't. This is actually the research for they call it zombie because." Like the coelacanth, they thought it was extinct, and they found it. He explained it to me. He schooled me on that, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So then I started going down the rabbit hole with him, and then one day we just started talking. He came on my show, and then we just became good friends. We talked all the time, and he would tell me, like his views on things, and I watched as his views began to change as more and more evidence began to pour in. I would give him studies of cases, and he would go and look at it and go, "Dude, this is weird,"
I've changed my mind. I countless times, doing research over the years, and getting back to what you touched on, the whole Bigfoot spine, go play with him, blah blah blah, type thing. Okay, now let's look at this. Let's look at this Bigfoot thing from two aspects, real quick. If it's an ape, okay, if it's an ape, let's go, kids. You're going to let you go play with a silverback over in the zoo?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's a primitive human, do you really trust this thing? I mean, my point is, these things, it doesn't matter what they are, they're predictable. They're apex predators, and they should be treated as such. You walk up on a bear and his cubs, you're going to say, "Oh, y'all go play with them." Now, I know some people, they get out, like Yellowstone, they get out and go try to pet a bison, and they get a horn up the butt. But, it's when you're out there, I hate to say this, but I think it's because I don't like. I think that's foolish advice, is what that guy said. Whoever it was, because especially when it comes to kids, these things are powerful enough to where you couldn't do anything if it decided to act, defensively or whatever. You wouldn't have time, and even if you tried, you're going to be dead right there beside him, or mauled. And me and you both have taken reports of these things attacking people, Dogman, and we've heard reports of them saving people, So to me, the behavior is all over the map. You can't say in a blanket term how all these creatures are they're gonna act towards people, because you may have a troop of Bigfoot that live on your property. You get along with them fine, and they don't hurt anybody. They're Harry and Henderson's type thing, whatever. But across, down in Florida, down here in Texas, down, in Louisiana, they're a little more cranky. They seem to be a little more cranky down here. You can't say that geographically all across the country that they're going to behave the same. We can't even say that about humans, because look at the different tribes of humans that, early humans, or even the ones that are, basically undiscovered at this point. You walk into one village and, you're welcomed as a friend. You walk into another village, you find yourself rotating on the spit over a fire. So, and we've even got reports of that, the Janoskua, the face eaters. So you can't tell me that anybody can absolutely know how these things act all the time. That you cannot and a lot of people make this mistake. It drives me nuts. You cannot put your opinion out there as fact. You just can't do it, because you're going to get people hurt, and maybe it won't be by Bigfoot or whatever, but you can't tell people to go out in the woods if they have no experience and they just go out there and they end up getting hurt by other things or themselves, or get lost. I mean, I don't know. I think that's just irresponsible. But
very, very irresponsible. One of the things you said earlier, Tex, I wanted to ask about. Now, you said Jessica, she actually remote views. Now, I had a remote viewer who remote viewed my encounter, and he was pretty good. His name was Dennis, and he did a pretty good job. Like, he actually, I had never divulged this information about the color of the house that was next door to my friend's house, my friend that was there when it happened. And he knew the color of it, and he knew the trim and everything. As far as I know, he's the only one that's ever he knew that. Like, he did a pretty good job of seeing it, you know what I mean? And then he gave me his opinion, kind of on what he thought it was or whatever. But here's the question. Like, you said that she remote viewed Port Lock, like Port Chatham. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that situation there, that was something that I went over with David Weatherly when he came on the show, because he wrote a book about Alaskan, the creatures of the last frontier. I think that he's writing a book of all the 50 states, and he's like up to, like, I don't know, 15 or 20, something like that. He's pumping them out pretty quick, and he's a prolific author too, just like a lot of our friends like Nick Redfern. That guy, man. Yeah. He writes like a book a week. He's probably already written one by the time the show's over.
I think somebody said this the other day. We was talking about him at the conference. We think he writes in his sleep. I think it was Ken that said that.
Yeah, Ken was like, he's probably by the time dinner's over, he'll have another book written.
Yeah, it was either Ken or Cliff or both of them.
Yeah, he's a very prolific author too, but David he's really impressed me, and I have all of those books, like those 50, the ones he's done so far. And he is going to be at the conference too. He's going to speak, and we've been friends for a while. And so he's written all these books, but I think Alaska, that one really grabbed me. I was just like really fascinated, and it was very interesting. That book was very good. And so I had him on, and we talked about that particular state, and it was the Alaskan cryptids. I had a lot of people asking me about it. And then Ken was on a show called Missing in Alaska, and they talked about a lot of other mysteries, the Amarok, and just all these different, mysteries and stories. And I think that when you're looking at what you said about Bigfoot down here being a little more cantankerous, I would say Oklahoma, in particular, like near Lake Texoma, you get like these really aggressive Bigfoot and Dogman, and they're distinctly two different things. And I've seen it, dude. Like I haven't seen them there, but I mean, I've talked to a tribal policeman who's a friend of mine from the Choctaw, and he was just like, dude, I mean, like, he claims to have seen some really crazy stuff up there, and he gave me a witness that had told me, about a very highly aggressive Bigfoot encounter. The weird thing about that case, though, and I haven't released the information on it yet because I'm planning on taking a trip up there this summer later, and maybe doing a little research and just seeing, what's up there, because there were two people, and one saw a Bigfoot and the other one saw a Dogman. And I'm talking in the same case. And the one guy was
but I've heard them before too, so. You know,
do what?
Being side by side. I've heard about, you know, being spotted side by side. Even, you know, people claim to take a picture of, you know, a Bigfoot nest, and you have Dogman pups crawling all over the place. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, you know what's weird? Like Barton Nunley, you know, the author, you know, Barton Nunley, he claims that, you know, that there were two different creatures running around when he's writing a book right now, The Spotsville Monster, and I can't wait till he finishes it. He's written Mysterious Kentucky, it's a really great book, and then he wrote Inhumanoids, which I think is the best book about any sort of cryptid that I've ever. That's probably hands down the best one I've ever read. It was just so good. It was so fascinating, and you know, I was just like enthralled by that book, but you know, when he finishes Spotsville Monster, I think it's going to be very interesting. He talks about two different creatures running around side by side, and one looked sort of dogmanish, but not werewolfish like some of these creatures, like the one I saw, but dogmanish. But then he saw this Bigfoot creature that was running around with it. Now, this case that I was given by my friend up there, this one was a case where he had told me, hey, there's this guy that, you know, whatever. And I talked to him, and he claimed that him and it was him and his little brother, half brother, and they were up there, and they're part native. They're on their mom's side, I think. And it's crazy that but they saw one creature, and him and his brother argued. They were like, you know, and they're not kids. This didn't happen when they were kids. It happened when they were in their late teens. I think he was 19. His brother was 17. That's what it was. And his brother, he said, his dad was like, well, tell me what you saw. And his brother was very adamant that it looked like a werewolf. And he was like, what? That's not what I saw. He said, well, what did you see? He said, it looked like a giant ape-like creature. It moved kind of like an ape, but then it kind of stood up, and its legs looked kind of weird. So at that point, I was like, what legs looking weird? Like, you know, so I haven't spoken to these guys to really, this happened when they were young guys, and I haven't spoken to them to know like exactly what he meant by the weird legs, but he was pretty adamant it didn't have a snout, but the other one was like, yes, it did. It was at dusk, you know? So, but in Lake Texoma, I got one story of this guy that was on his boat, and these two hairy humanoid looking creatures with pointy heads that very much sounded like Bigfoot. The ears were where they're supposed to be, like a human would have, and they didn't have any hair on their hands, and they had normal legs, and they were throwing rocks at his boat, like from the shore. And he got out of there, and he got a very good description of them. And of course, this happened, I think, in 1991. And he said that this, you know, he was just sitting there in his boat, and they started lobbing rocks at him. I've heard that around here too, in the San Gabriel River. Like, they like to throw rocks from elevated positions to get you out of their area.
Well, that's the thing that happened to Rob in his encounter too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Rob on the phone yet. He did tell me that he had some stories, and so yeah, I'm going to get to him too. But yeah, he had Rob's got some stories. But there was this other case that, and I know this one was on the same show I was on, These Woods Are Haunted. I think it was on season 2. My show was episode 3 it was season 3, episode 1, and it was about a church that I went to, you know, whatever, but that's another story. But the show, it was on These Woods Are Haunted. And this guy and his two friends, I think it was two brothers and a friend or something like that.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, because on season 3, some of those witnesses that I gave him those witnesses, but season 2, that I didn't give them that witness. But that story was crazy because I had talked to some people in that area that were from that area, and they said that was not even one of the scariest ones that they'd heard. And those guys were attacked by 3 dogmen, and they were attacked. I mean, you know, and there was a guy that told me, he goes, I used to, you know, go fishing out there all the time. He goes, and I got chased right into the water. And this one just stood on the edge of the water and just kept growling at him and snapping And then it walked back into the woods. And then when he ran back to the shore and got on his boat, pulled it away from the, he's like, dude, I saw 2 more come out and they began to run toward me, got in the water and began to swim toward me. And he said he didn't get a good look at this. The second 2, it was dark. It was almost dark. But the first one, it was very adamant that it was large and it had black fur. And he said it was almost shiny in the light. He could see it shining. And when it turned to the side, it was almost like it kind of faded into the background, like almost like camouflage, which I thought was interesting because you get these stories, and I've already gotten a whole nother passel of them from when I did the Shimmering Phantom episode, basically of these things cloaking themselves. And you get that a lot around that corridor, that Red River corridor going up into Oklahoma. You get a lot of those weird. Yeah, Oklahoma seems to be like a spot for these things, and a lot of the cloaking. Like I got one right out there outside of the city of. Oh my gosh, I can't believe mine just blinked. It's the hometown of President Eisenhower, and I had a story. Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the name of the town, but it's the last town going into. Like once you cross the Red River and you're going up to Durant, I'm trying to remember the name of the town. But anyway, I had a story that I had done on the show on the Dogman Encounters on my show. But I had a story about a cloaking creature, and I thought, dude, this is crazy. This is the same corridor, same town, right there by the Red River. And I'm thinking, could it be the same creature? Like, is it a dogman that's doing that? Because, Palmetto State Park right here in Texas, I get stories of this weird invisible entity. Some people see it from the side and it looks like a Bigfoot, it's like a shimmering looking thing.
Yeah, they talk about the whole predator effect. Yeah, I've heard a lot of it. And I think that's getting back to where, what we're talking about, there's a lot more stuff going on. You were talking about the whole Red River corridor and stuff. I've got a lot of accounts down there, and I've got one account that this old boy was hunting down there on the Red River, and he saw a Bigfoot. He gut shot it with a 30-30, and it stumbled out into the river, and 2 more Bigfoot rushed it from the other side, and basically clotheslined it and broke its neck, tore it apart and ate it right there on the sandbar. And I mean, that's, that's one of those accounts where you go, okay, well, it wouldn't matter to me if I'm not going to let my kids go play with Bigfoot,
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
There's another account of a guy that this took place on the Texas side of the Red River, that he had a deer blind, and he was, going to be out there for about a week. He had canoed, I think, boated downriver to this place, and he had built this blind and everything, and basically a tree house is what it was. But I think he was out there the 3rd day, and this happened, the 3rd night. Evidently, they'd been trying. There was a troop of Bigfoot out there. Evidently, that was their hunting grounds, and from what we can surmise, anyway. They had evidently been trying to give him hints to get the hell out of Dodge, right? And he ignored them. So 3 of them attacked his blind, and they were reaching in through the walls and stuff, trying to grab him and everything. And he grabbed his gun and just ran and jumped out of the door and broke the bottom step and ran through the woods down to the river, and they escorted him out, hooting and hollering at him and running beside him and stuff. And everybody talks about, oh my gosh, they were trying to kill him. No, they weren't, because if they'd wanted to, they'd have got him. The only place that they weren't attacking on that tree stand or that blind was the exit.
Wow, they were trying to get him out of there.
Exactly. Now, this guy left his optics, his clothes, his ammo, everything, and he wouldn't go back and get it. We even offered to bring it to him. He said, "No, I don't want it. They can have it."
Yeah. I got a story not too long ago right here in Tech. Denison was the name of that town, by the way. I was trying to remember the name.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah,
it just came to me. But I had a story. This happened right outside of Bertram. And this guy was out there hunting, and he went back to his vehicle, and he had an old Ford, and it wouldn't start. And next thing you know, so he's like, it's cold. And so he had a cell phone. And he called, he had signal, and he said, hey, I'm stuck out here. And his brother's like, well, I'm over here in Burnett. I'll come get you, but I'm doing some stuff. I'll go get you. And his brother took his sweet time, and by the time he fell asleep, and then he hears like a loud bang, and then he wakes up, and there is a huge rock that has been thrown through the back window of his truck. And I got the picture, but it doesn't it's not gonna. I'm not gonna post it and go, hey, look, this is Bigfoot did this, because. And I'm not saying he's lying, because I believe his story, but I'm not going to post the picture and be like, hey, this guy got attacked by a Bigfoot, because I'm going to be lampooned by everybody. Oh, yeah, well, I don't see any. His ex-wife might have got mad because he got drunk and did that. Who knows? Right, you know what I mean? She might have been like, you came home drunk and threw a rock through it or something. Who knows? So you could see that it was a large. It went right through it busted out the windshield. You could see it. And it must have been going pretty fast. And then then it was another rock that came from the side. And he said that it was in quick succession. So there had to be more than one creature, that put the dent in there, and like I said, anybody could go and take a rock and throw it against a truck. and it's an old beat up pickup truck. But he was pretty adamant that that's what it was. Now, the only thing he saw was to his right, he saw a really large black shadow move really quickly. And he asked me what I thought it was, and I said, "Well, what did you see the silhouette? Did you see a snout?" And he said, "No, I did see kind of a pointy looking head, like that's kind of what I." And so I thought, it's probably a Bigfoot. But there are in that area right there a lot of Dogman reports and a lot of Bigfoot reports and crawlers. I've gotten rake type creatures that they call crawlers out of that area. But hey, okay, so. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up tonight, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week as me and Tex continue this conversation. And thank you for listening. Please be sure and like and subscribe. And for everybody out there listening, tune in next Friday. And good night.